Taylor Holmes here with Taylor Holmes Incorporated. Um, Sitting here in a parking lot. Let's hear it for production quality material. But I'm too excited not to be talking about this particular movie today. It's a pretty cool one. Currently in the middle of the write up for it. And so I figured I'd throw my camera on and throw a few ideas at you. Love to get the conversation started. Have really been enjoying the conversation that we've been having on Patreon in regards to the power of the dog. That's been awesome. Great to see the Patreon side of things lighten up again. So this movie is The Night House. It was brought to us by David Bruckner, the director. The writers are Ben Collins and Luke Piotrowski. Bruckner, you probably know from The Ritual, which was a great flick. VHS is like his biggest, I think. But a lot of fun movies there from Bruckner. The Night House is fantastic. A really good, slickly designed idea of a movie that a lot of people, I think, online are mistaking as being a movie about depression and loss. And I don't think that's what the movie is about at all. Yeah, there's a lot going on in this movie, and to just kind of chalk it to, you know, suicide and loss and depression, misses the core, the crux of this story. Okay, so and the ending is an awesome twist, and we learn a ton about Beth in the ending, and also Owen. We learn a lot about Owen as well. So the movie the movie tells the story of a couple without children. Um, we've got Beth played by Rebecca Hall, and Owen. Uh, Evan Joniak. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. Um, Evan, played by Evan. Um, and Owen commits suicide, right? Um, but the details of it don't get revealed until Beth starts talking to a parent of a teacher, a parent of a student, in a teacher parent conference. We learned that Owen rode out in the middle of the lake and shot himself. He left a note, and the note was very unhelpful. And that's key. That suicide note is really key to what is going on in this movie. I think if we put all the pieces together, we'll come to a pretty good conclusion as to what has been happening all along. A little later on in the story, we learn from Beth that at 17, she was in a car accident and she died for 4 minutes. And we learned that as a result of that encounter, she saw that after the afterlife was just a tunnel. And we learned that she believes that there's nothing after. And so I think if you watch this play out, you can realize that yeah, people just parking next to me. I think this is awesome. Um, you learn that she thought there was nothing. Owen thought there was something, and he was, hell-bound to convince her that there were, life was worth living, and there is an afterlife, and I don't know if it was a spiritual discussion that they were having, but it was, it was a spiritual-esque sort of afterlife conversation that they'd been having. But in the end, he leaves this note that says there is nothing after out in the afterlife, right? Which is fairly disappointing to her that he would say that to her. So all that to say, as we plod through this, she begins investigating his life and learns that he's been following women that look just like her. Oh, and oh, by the way, he's also been building another house that is the mirror image of their house. And, carderas, mazes, Welsh mazes, hedge mazes, that sort of thing. Um, and he's, really interested in tricks and architectural tricks and, something to do with evil and evil presences and tricking spirits. Like something about that is going on. Eventually, after she allows the evil in, there's a knock at the door and she opens the door and the evil walks in. After these encounters kind of continue, she has a conversation with a gal at a local bookstore where he's been buying these weird books. And eventually, after seeing in a dream this house across the lake, she goes and investigates, and there in the floorboards are a bunch of women. What is that about? So, as the story plays out, we realize that he has been trying to thwart some sort of evil spirit. He's been trying to keep it at bay. But when he cannot, he ends up killing these women that look like Beth. Is he, though? Maybe not. Ultimately, you might be thinking that the movie is about depression and about her just visions about, Owen and the evil and making these things up. But actually, if you start putting the pieces all together, you realize that when she died at 17, she actually released an evil spirit to chase her and to follow her. And Owen has been working hard to waylay this spirit, who is attempting to kill Beth through him specifically. And so Owen has been building these architectural tricks, coming from this Cardera idea of Welsh hedge mazes, and working hard to find ways to slow the spirit down and to keep it from getting its hands on Beth. So his whole life has been dedicated to his wife, right? Protecting her. Eventually, the spirit wins out and takes control of Owen and gets him to commit suicide. We know this is what happened because even Beth is confused as to the spirit's identity, and we learn that Beth realizes that the bathroom scene. In that bathroom scene, we notice that she thinks it's Owen, but ultimately the spirit admits that it's not, right? So similarly, I believe that the spirit took control, not able to get Owen to do what it wants him to do, and he's been killing these other women to waylay the spirit, or maybe the spirit is taking control of them and killing these others as a sleight of hand or a confusing tactic that keeps the spirit from touching Beth or actually getting to Beth, right? Could it be that Owen is keeping these women as fronts that look similar to Beth to keep the spirit from getting its hands on Beth herself, right? Is that making sense? So ultimately, we learned that there is a spirit that was released at 17 from Beth, chases her, and begins. Owen realizes what's going on because the spirit is using him to get to her. He loves her eternally and refuses to allow the spirit to get to her, doesn't want to tell her about it. Eventually starts building these mazes, building a house in reverse, rebuilding these architectural mazes and confusing patterns and lines to keep the spirit from getting to her. He is overwhelmed by the spirit, rows out into the middle of the lake, shoots himself. He doesn't shoot himself. The spirit shoots Owen. The spirit leaves a note in advance for Beth saying, "You're right, there is nothing." The most depressing thing that the spirit could possibly say to Beth. Beth is overcome by the depression of it all and the knowledge that her husband has been killing women, absent this larger knowledge of what's actually going on. Um, and um, and so she's overcome by the spirit now, and she, goes out in the boat and goes to commit suicide. But her two friends, the neighbor and her friend, go and intercede, and she's saved, right? But I don't believe that Owen was actually the one killing these women, and I don't believe he was a serial killer. I believe he was sort of putting them in harm's way. Yes, he was at fault for putting these women at risk, but I don't believe that he was actively killing these women. I believe this evil spirit that was chasing down Beth was the one that was actually murdering the women. Um, does that kind of make sense? Does that tie up the story? I think that's what's going on, and although the movie doesn't really wrap it up that succinctly, I believe that is the crux of what is happening here. All right. Taylor Holmes, think, uh, didn't want to wait to get back to my office to video this one up. Hopefully, I'll have this out to you this weekend. I hope you guys are doing great. Can't wait to push my Night House write up as well. And I hope you're digging the Patreon content and the fun. You get to sit with me while I wait for my daughter to come out from dance and hang out with me while I do. This is where I normally do most of my writing. So welcome to the party. Glad you're on board. Glad you're participating here at Think. And thank you so much for subscribing. Take care.